Not required to, but if you have access to it and would like to follow along, we're currently in the OneNote file of Modal Node System, MNS Presentation 2364, OneNote Scale Degree Chords versus Modal Chords with color. List of presentations, they're on the right, which we plan on adding plenty more to shortly. Also noting in this OneNote presentation, we'll spend our time on music theory, but have a similarly named and numbered presentation where we build these tables in Excel, practicing music, Excel, and table visualization skills all at the same time. Quick overview of our objective here, that being to come up with a color system which is optimized for helping us understand music theory, as well as create tools such as a colored fretboard to navigate the fretboard and to better understand more specifically this time chord constructions. So for example, if you were to ask a chatbot like a ChatGTP, would you please give me a list of chord constructions that are common to a 7-note collection, such as the 7-note collection built around the C major? You might get a table that looks something like this. All of these chords then are chords that shouldn't land you in the ocean, meaning you can build them from at least one of the nodes in the 7-note collection and not have to grab a note that is outside of that 7-note collection. However, as we saw before, because it's not based on the nodes themselves, it's a little difficult to know exactly how this is going to be applying out. In other words, I'd rather see this by, if I have the 7 main notes, recognize those 7 main notes by, say, the Nashville number system, and then determine which of the chords I can build off of each of those 7 notes. That, in essence, is what the Nashville number system is doing. The normal chord system doesn't name the chords by the relative position, but rather by note, which doesn't tell you anything about the relative position. But the color helps us with this chord chart. So I'm going to show it first, then we'll go through the process, and then I'll go back in here and show it again. So for example, the major chords are the green ones. So you would expect that all of the major or Ionian node chords, in this case off of the C, would fit into this pattern. These are all green in that they're going to be matching the modal color that we've come up with, which is going to be, in essence, the yellow-green color. But if it's a 3-note chord, it's going to be lighter. 4-note chords are going to be a little darker, 5 a little darker, 6 a little darker, and 7 a little bit darker. Now, if I was to compare the other 2 major modes to the Ionian, they would include the Lydian. Now, so the Lydian, notice, doesn't have anything up top. That's a blue color. I don't see any blue colors for the 3, 4, and 5. Why? Because it has the same construction. It has been consumed by the major chords. They look the same. They have the same relative positions. But then you can see that by color, it breaks out here. So if I know that color are the ones built off of the Lydian mode, they're going to be Lydian chords. I can see that this is the point that they're going to break out. Why does that happen? Because the Lydian has an augmented 4th or 11th, which messes everything up from that point onward. And then the other one that's a major is the Mixolydian. Mixolydian is magenta color. When we build off of the Mixolydia, you can see we have this whole category for them, but the top one isn't there. Why? Because the top one is consumed by the major, and then the rest of them are broken out. What about the minors? Primarily located in our minor column, and then we could have some minor extensions. We would expect the minor column to be completely dominated by the Aeolian, which is the main minor, the minor scale, in a similar fashion as the major scale or Ionian dominated the entire major column. Not exactly what happens in the minor, however. The Aeolian is red, and we have all shades of red except for this last one where we have the 13, in which case we need an extension for the minor. So that's going to be the pattern for the minor in our table. If we compare the other 2 minor modes to it, that being the Dorian and the Phrygian, starting with the Dorian, which is green, you can see I don't see any green except for this yellow green, but I don't see the Dorian green anywhere as I go from the 3, 4, 5, and 6 note chords. Then we see it pop up on the 7. It took the place of this item that the Aeolian had to have an extension for. That means that the Dorian is completely consumed by the same minor and has the same structure, except because it has that one interval difference on the 13, which is equivalent to the 6, then that's why this is here, because now it has room. So it's kind of funny, because if we did not have the layer of the Aeolian, the Dorian would actually dominate the whole minor category from a chord construction. It fits all in one column, whereas the Aeolian, which you would expect to fit here, doesn't and needs an extension with that 13. So then we can go to the other minor, which is the Phrygian. So the Phrygian, you can see, is going to be this blue. It's going to be the spring blue. You don't see it for the 3 and the 4 note chords, because once again it's been dominated by the Aeolian. So it has the same structure as the Aeolian. Then you see it pop up here with the extensions, because the Phrygian has the minor 2nd or the minor 9. So that messes everything up from that point onwards, which is a 5-note chord, a 6-note chord, and then the 7-note chord down here. So the color does not totally clear up this table, but it helps a little bit. By the way, the diminished is going to be here. So you have the diminished, which is a 3-note, and then everything up from there is going to be the half diminished, built off of the Locrian node. So the color won't clear things up completely because our chord system is not optimal, but at least it clears things up a little bit. And what we want to do is, if we look at the fretboard and look at this one down here, which is breaking out each of the frets, the first side being the point, that point being either in note or in relative position or scale degree, the second side being distance, that being the intervals or modal distance, then thinking about our chords makes a lot more sense, because now I can look at the distance between each of these and measure from the perspective of each chord. So for example, here on the Ionian, here's an Ionian here, an Ionian here. It's a perfect first away, which is 0 notes away, 0 modal half steps away. If I look at the same collection of notes down here on this fretboard, it's now from the perspective of the Dorian. So the first side of each fret is the same, but the second side now has been changed to a different, to the perfect first tied to the Dorian. So these are tools that are actually quite effective in kind of understanding how the chord construction is working and measuring distance. So let's go back up top and then go through our color coding system bit by bit. So we have a color coding system for the points. The points are going to be the notes, or which is often more important, particularly in this presentation, that being the relative nodal positions. That's important here because we're going to give a color system to the chords based on the Nashville number system, which in essence we gave a color to. All right, so we have, let's just recap these. Red is A. We have A sharp or B flat is orange. Yellow is going to be a B. We've got C, which is note number 4, is going to be our yellow green. Now we're going to build our Ionian, like with the Nashville number system, is built off of the C to oftentimes. We're then going to give the same color system that way. So this is going to be yellow green, and that yellow green will apply to C, the note, but also apply to all Ionian if we think about it from the perspective of the nodal points for all 12 collections of 7 notes. The green is going to be note 5, which is C sharp or D flat, and then the note 6, D, is going to be spring green, and that's the Dorian note, because we go a whole step up if we apply the formula from the C. So that one, again, is going to be our permanent position or our permanent Dorian color for all 12 sets of 7 notes. Cayenne is going to be note 7, D sharp or E flat, and then we've got note 8, which is E, is going to be sky blue or Phrygian, because now you can see the formula whole. So this is going to be then the Phrygian color from the perspective if we're looking at the points by basically Nashville number system in colors as opposed to by notes. The 9 is going to be an F, which is going to be blue. Once again, that's Lydian because the formula is whole, half. So Lydian will be blue for all 12 color sets. And then 12 is F sharp or G flat. which is going to be violet, and then note 11 is G, which is magenta, and magenta is going to be mixolydian. So from a Nashville number color system, we're going to say that mixolydian will have an absolute color of magenta. G sharp or A flat, which is note 12, is going to be rose. And then A, as we flip around, we're going around the horn again, applying our formula, whole, whole, half, whole, whole, it's going to be red. So aeolian is going to be red from an absolute position. And then we're going to have the B completes our collection of 7 notes, and it's going to be yellow. So that means if we look at it by nodal point, we've got Ionian is going to be yellow-green, Dorian is going to be spring green, Phrygian is going to be sky blue, Lydian is blue, Mixolydian is magenta, and Aeolian is red, and Locrian is yellow. These are going to be our abbreviated letter names. This is our Nashville number system. Now these are going to be the permanent colors, which I'm also going to tie to the chords, remembering that if I use normal chord construction, I can't do this, right? Because the problem is the normal chords are named by note point, which doesn't tell me which collection of notes I'm in. But if we name them by relative position, then I can use an absolute color system to name the chords, which again is functionally a much better system to play within. It's going to be a lot easier to understand if instead of when we're playing, we name the relative position like the Nashville number system does, and as opposed to the note name, which also then permits us to do things like name the chord by starting point and ending point, or starting point and distance, as well as give it a permanent system of color similar to the Nashville number system based on the same concept. So then if I look at, we can look at distances now. So distances, we have modal half steps. Modal half steps represent the distance between each of the notes within like the 7 Nashville number notes. So if we have there's only 7 distances then, or 6 distances plus the 0, 7 distances. So it's going to be shades of gray, 6 or 7 shades of gray. I'm not going to take into account octaves here. I'm just going to keep it fairly simple for the local distance, 6 to 7 shades of gray. All right, and then when we look at the color system for distance, we also have half step distance. So these distances between the notes are not necessarily in our baseline units of half steps. They're in collection of notes. You have to know where you start from to know the total distance. These are going to give us half step distances using a similar color, but we've rotated the color wheel 15 degrees. So we have a different set of 12 notes so that we can name everything by color. So if I don't go anywhere, we're going to call that flame. If I go 1 note up, I don't care if you call that a 1 note away minor second or a half step up, I'm going to call it amber. 2 notes up, I don't care if you call it 2 notes up or a whole step or 2 half steps or a 2 note away major second, it's chartreuse. 3 notes up is lime, 4 notes up is mint, 5 notes up is aqua, 6 notes up is electric sky, 7 notes up is azure, 8 notes up is grape, 8 is grape, 9 is fire or orchid, and 10 is fuchsia, and 11 is going to be, I'm going to call it punch. All right, so those are going to be our distance names. All right, so now let's think about our naming convention for each of the chords. Now, the best way to really think, like if you're functionally thinking, how am I going to write a song? What you want, this chord chart that we looked at over here isn't all that helpful to you because it's not telling you which chords I can build off of in the collection of notes. It's easier to start off saying, okay, I'm in essence in some collection of notes, such as the 7-note collection, I can build off the C major. I don't have to make the C the tonic or the Ionian the tonic. I can make any of them the tonic, but I want to know which chords are available to me that aren't in the ocean, that aren't grabbing something that's outside the key. Because if I grab something outside the key, I want to do it intentionally. Okay, so this chord chart doesn't really do that because, again, it's hard to know which nodes you're on. Now, you're almost always going to be building something, at least from the framework of some collection, one of the 12 collections of 7 notes, with one of those notes being the tonic, right? So it'd be nicer to build the chords by saying, okay, what am I going to build off of each of those nodal points?